Na 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 na. Hey, gotta love that podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, yeah, I love that podcast show. Oh, BS and beer is the place to go to get all the Saints news. Hell yeah, podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, gotta love that podcast show. Na 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 na. Hey, yeah, I love your podcast show.
Now, recording live, it's the BS and Beer Podcast crew with your host, David Romero.
Welcome in another week, another edition. It's the BS and Beer Podcast crew recording from our new studios at Meat House Fork. The New Orleans Saints lose a head-scratching game to the Raiders, and we're going to go into depth. What does this all mean? What does it mean for the future of Drew Brees or the Saints? Are we still a playoff team? We'll answer those questions for you today. Before we get to that, I want to give a little shout-out to the folks who have, over time, messaged me on the Podbeam account, and quite frankly, I just saw them recently, and I cannot respond to them. So why don't you guys follow me on Twitter at SaintsBS, and that way I can get back to you guys. I don't want you to think I'm intentionally ignoring the comments or what have you. I appreciate the kind remarks and some of the funny remarks. You guys were talking about Don Bobo, and I just saw it, and it was like 8 months ago. So maybe we'll have to bring some Don Bobo back, especially with the way that the Saints are playing right now. So please follow me on Twitter, and we'll have some discussions. And when you make a comment, I'll see them right away and can reply to you. Also, our new relationship with Dome Patrol. I've been friends with these guys for a long time, and we're now doing something. We're on their feed, and we're gonna create a channel that's like a radio station where you can listen to Dome Patrol. Dome Patrol has several different shows, Pelicans, UK, soccer, and all kinds of stuff. And then we've added the BS and Beer along with that. So it's a great thing. You guys are going to want to follow it, because eventually I'm going to get rid of this particular feed. So you'll have to go to the Dome Patrol United feed to get BS and Beer and all the other things. Like I said, kind of like a radio station. But today I was listening to their instant reaction show, and they had this comment that they made. It's funny. I know who did it, and he made a comment about the way I feel about Pete. And so he represented me as being like, I support Pete. And the thing about it is Pete does some good things, so don't get me wrong. But I've listened to Steve Court, and I've listened to another scout that I have a relationship with, and they keep telling me that Pete's this really good ball player. So I have a hard time looking at them and saying they don't know what they're talking about. But, man, he continuously makes bad plays. And I want to clear that up, because someone, you might know who.
Now, who's responsible for this unwarranted attack on my person?
We know it was Jeff. Jeff making comments about how I feel about things without me having an opportunity to defend myself. So I'm going to have to go on with those guys and let them know how I really feel about Pete. Matter of fact, he makes another comment because I came up with this and texted them about Sanders saying that, and kind of tongue-in-cheek, that he doesn't even know sometimes when he's supposed to be on the field. So last night I pointed out that I didn't think he would have a big impact, and I thought that Smith would have a bigger impact, and he brought that up, but then couldn't remember who told him that. So I think that's an unwarranted attack on my person. So I'm going to have to go on the show and straighten him out. And until I do, I don't know, maybe I'll have to write him a strongly worded letter or something. But anyway, sit back, relax, because we're about to do the New Orleans Saints BS and Beer style, and you don't want to miss it.
Tonight on BS and Beer Radio Broadcast Corporation Incorporated, it's the Action Suspense Airline Highway at 9:30, followed by this year's award-winning suspense thriller Camp Beast. Next, it's hilarious family fun suitable for all ages with Drew, Sean, and Mickey. Then it's Sex in the Cell Block, the hot new show that's too racy for daytime. That's Sex in the Cell Block at 11 tonight. Then it's Saints Talk with Dave, Tomas, Heath, and the BS and Beer podcast crew. every night here on the BS&B Radio Broadcast Corporation Incorporated, a limited liability corporation.
All right, now let's bring in Heath Elsinson. Heath, I know yesterday we were talking during the game, and you were obviously dissatisfied, and rightfully so, about the play of the Saints. But let's talk a little bit how they came out so strong. I mean, weren't you under the same impression that I was, that the Saints were just going to run away with this and that the Raiders simply weren't in the Saints league?
Yeah, and I think that's what's really so puzzling about this game to me. In fact, I think I texted it out to y'all that, boy, it's going to be a really long night for the Raiders. I mean, that's just how I look. Both sides of the ball, Saints came out blazing. And then, I mean, just literally dropped off of the face of the earth. I mean, the game swung around from one extreme to the, one side to the other so dramatically. And so today people are making excuses for the Saints that, they're just out of sync and this, that. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, I get that. There was no preseason and all that kind of stuff. Every team's kind of going through this. But how do you start out playing that well and then just completely, in other words, that's the part that I just can't go with that. They would have looked rusty through the whole thing. Well, then that's one thing,
Yeah, I tend to agree with you because I'm on the side of, well, we're rusty. But here's how I look at it and where my concerns come from. Because now, look, the Saints' long game, despite those who want to fight and argue, the Saints' long game has long ago gone. The Saints simply don't have a deep ball game anymore. If they even throw a deep ball twice a game, that's pretty impressive relative to how often they do it. The intermediate game is somewhat hit or miss. So the Saints are now completely relying on their short game, and I say short to intermediate, and throwing to the backs and being a precise precision offense with a strong running game and strong offensive line, which, listen, you can win football games that way.
Right.
But it's all predicated on our defense being a top 10 defense. You cannot play the 12-play, 72-yard drive, taking up 8 minutes football game without a defense that can be, I don't even want to say dominant, but be very consistent, a defense that you can't score on a regular basis. They make plays sometimes. And, listen, while they might give up some yards, they always come up pretty big. And, again, top 10 defense. Right now, that is not the way the Saints are playing. And Drew Brees, while I saw some offensive line issues, and unfortunately I'm thinking about that, is maybe some of that's to be expected. You have a rookie that had no offseason that's now not even really the starter until obviously he gets his feet wet. I'm not worried about Ruiz, but, he didn't start. You had Easton in there. So your offensive line's in a little bit of disarray, and Drew Brees is simply not as accurate as we're used to seeing him.
Yeah. I mean, by and large, I thought the offensive line actually played pretty well. I mean, they opened holes, obviously, for the run. They never did sack Brees, I don't believe, not even once. They flushed him out a couple of times. But really, by and large, the offensive line would be one of the brighter spots from the game, other than Kamara, that I would point to. But, yeah, I mean, the defense now, we thought they looked good last week. But now I'm starting to wonder if it just wasn't a matter of Tampa Bay was just that rusty and disarray on offense that it made our defense look a lot better than we thought it was. Because watching this and looking, look on paper, Lattimore and Jackrabbit and Marcus Williams, who people are claiming is, going to be the next high-paid safety, that he's as good as the top 4 guys in the league. And then you bring Malcolm Jenkins back, and you got all this defensive line talent rotating in and out, and Demario Davis, and just on and on, Anzalone back. On paper, you're thinking, man, this is literally the best defense the Saints have ever fielded, certainly in the Peyton era, potentially and all. When you look at it on paper, and then when you saw it on, as they say, that's why they play the game, right? I mean, when we saw it on the field yesterday, God, it was terrible. I mean, it wasn't just not good; it was horrible. It reminded me of the defense of the 3, 7, and 9s that, those years when we were setting records for being bad every year in defense. That's literally what it looked like yesterday.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned when you look at the Raiders. They look really fast, and it starts making you wonder, golly, like, is it just, again, when you're on and you're looking good, you look good, and when you're not, you start looking slow. And the Raiders simply made the Saints look slow last night. And it's not that we have a bunch of guys on defense who can't move, but for whatever reason, after that first quarter, and again, that's the most perplexing thing, is the first quarter was absolutely dominant. I don't know how you could even say it any different way. The Saints defense looked unstoppable. And here's the irony in it, is that the Saints offense was unstoppable for the vast majority of the game. Now, they made some mistakes. They had one series where they had 3 penalties consecutively, 2 holding penalties, and then a 15-yard, what was it? It was the, I don't know, crackback block on Sanders, which very questionable. I mean, he didn't even really block him.
That was a side swipe. No.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous call. But other than that, they could not tackle Kamara. Kamara was getting, and I'm saying this in a very general way because I don't have the stats in front of me, but it seemed like, maybe that's big, it felt like he would get 5 yards before even being touched by a defender in most cases. So It's just Kamara got out there, whether it was a run or a catch, he was uncontested and was just running silly around these guys. But for whatever reason, we stopped being able to get into the end zone. We had the interception before the first half, and all of a sudden, defense that went from looking like, man, we had a couple of sacks early. I specifically recall them saying, and oh man, another coverage sack, meaning the receivers couldn't get open, to we simply could not cover anything.
Yeah. Yeah, early on, I mean, the defensive line was getting pressure and all, and so Carr didn't really have time to sit there and throw either. Some of them, I think, were more of a coverage sack thing, but some of them they would just get into. And quite frankly, they flushed him out a bunch of times, which brings up I saw more holding last night than I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there were a couple of times, once in particular I can think of, when Onyemata came through the center and the center grabbed a hold of him and was holding on beside him, then was completely around behind him, holding on with his 2 feet dragging and everything, and no call at all. And it was obvious because you got the one official that's literally standing there watching the quarterback. And so don't even get me started on that. But the weird thing is the defense went down at a time when I thought it was going to get even more ugly, right? They were already on the backup to the tackle.
Right.
And then Incognito goes down hurt. And I'm like, oh, Lord, man, they get ready to bring another backup in at guard. This is going to get ugly. And from that point on, the Saints defense the line was not able to ever get any real pressure or get to him. I mean, the exact opposite of what I expected to happen wound up happening.
Yeah. And then, man, is it Waller? And I'm not even embarrassed to say I truly didn't really know who that guy was.
A lot of people didn't know who he was.
And I, maybe I should be embarrassed, but I'm not gonna say I haven't heard his name, and I remember there was the drug issues, but I didn't know that he was, I just figured another guy that went down. Is he that good? Because now, and again, it could be because of the game, but the broadcasters last night, they could not say enough good things about him, and deservingly so, because he was unstoppable. They tried everybody they could to put on this tight end, and nobody. Malcolm Jenkins had the single worst night I've ever seen of a safety, and not only run defense, but particularly in pass defense. And he just I don't know what to say. It was embarrassing how poorly he played. And listen, if we had any doubts about how good Davis is, I mean, last night he was the only guy that on a couple of occasions did stop him, and then on most of the occasions when he was covering him, played it pretty well, and Demario Davis was the only guy that could cover him. And maybe it's because of his physicality and his size, but nobody else really had a shot at it.
Yeah, I mean, that guy, if you look at his numbers from last year, we should have really known who. I mean, that's just how far the Raiders were off of my radar.
Right.
Last year. I mean, I really couldn't have told you anything about the Raiders from last year, but I mean, he was second only to Kelsey in every major category. He had 91 receptions for over 1,000. I had no idea, honestly. And it's even more shocking when you realize he's from Georgia Tech, a team that I think runs the wishbone or whatever. I mean, like they're They're not even a passing team. And how he came out of there, I have no idea. But he's legit. And I mean, he's big and he's fast. And he just, now the good news is going forward, we're not going to run across too many more Wallers this season.
Well, and now I do wonder, because I was about to make a statement that I wonder, it's like, yeah, we may not have known, but did the Saints know? The Saints probably did know. And that makes me a little bit more worried, because it's one thing to go in and say, man, this guy, some rookie or some guy who really, maybe put it this way. All of a sudden, Tre'Quan Smith comes out and you can't stop him. You're like, man, we didn't expect that. We thought we knew who he was, but all of a sudden, off season, he got a little strength. He got a little whatever he did. But Waller was a good player last year, and it still doesn't seem like the Saints went into the game saying we have to stop this guy. So while they may have known who he was, they obviously didn't think enough of him that they would need to have a game plan that precise to stop him.
I think they did. Honestly, I think they did. I think he was good enough that there wasn't anything they could do about it. We had a guy like that one time named Jimmy Graham. The other teams knew it was coming. They knew what we were going to do. You could have rode out there and told them, hey, man, we're going to throw it to Jimmy Graham over and over and over. And there still wasn't anything they could have done about it.
Right.
Michael Thomas like that today for the most part. They can't handle him. It doesn't matter. It's coming. 149 times last year they knew it was coming. Nobody could stop it. And so, and I think that's basically what happened to him yesterday. I think they actually had a plan for it. It just nobody was good enough to step up to the task. I mean,
well, so it's the old Mike Tyson thing where everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and all of a sudden everybody's looking at each other on the sideline saying, I had a plan, coach.
Yeah. And Malcolm Jenkins got punched in the mouth hard.
Well, speaking of Tre'Quan Smith, and you and I had a little disagreement in a text last night. Now, I almost feel like I have to kind of explain myself. So during the week, a report came out that Sanders made a comment that, he's sometimes I don't even know when I'm supposed to be in the game. And I'm sure that was an exaggeration. I hope that was an exaggeration. But what it led me to believe is Sanders was basically saying, if we think that Thomas goes down and all of a sudden I'm going to step up and I'm going to get, 15 receptions, I'm still learning the offense. And so last night when I sent that text out explaining that, really it wasn't because I was saying, hey, Tre'Quan Smith's the next great thing. It was like, if you really think about it, of all the receivers that are legitimate on the Saints offense, he's the only one that truly knows the offense. He's been around for 3 years now. He's been, 3 off seasons. So he understands it. Now, what I like about it is that while he went for 5 for over 80 yards, and some have made the comments that all that came early, but at the same time, there's been a lot of criticism towards Smith because he's, and maybe I'm exaggerating, but because he's not Michael Thomas. But I think he went a long way to prove that he is a very solid number 3 receiver. And the idea that somehow, and it didn't come from you guys, but on the internet, that somehow his career's in jeopardy. He's obviously a guy that can make plays. And what looked to me have happened is they realized that they were throwing to him and they shut him down, which if it's Michael Thomas, they try it, they can't. But, a guy who's not as talented as Michael Thomas gets shut down. So, but if he's in the number 2 role, number 3 role, I think the Saints do have a good player, albeit not maybe necessarily all pro player or something, but they have a solid receiver in Smith who showed some good hands. I know early where we got into our thing was the drop where Drew Brees, again, in my opinion, was inaccurate, threw the ball high, and Tre'Quan Smith took a huge hit in the ribs. But it does bring up the question, Heath, is Tre'Quan, could he make plays as the number 3 if Brees was maybe looking at guys like he used to instead of focusing simply on one player in Michael Thomas?
Well, that's been the question, right? I mean, the only time we've seen Tre'Quan make some plays in regular situations in games and make some really great catches, right? He's shown that he has a lot of talent. But his 2 biggest games now was the game against Carolina at the end of the year when none of the other starters played and everything. He had the 10-catch, 100 whatever yard game and all it was. And then yesterday with Michael Thomas out, he stepped into Michael Thomas's place basically and ran his routes and everything. He even did one of the trademark slants and looked a lot like Michael Thomas on that play. But that's kind of the only time he really, really shows up. You know what I mean? And so the question is, well, is it just because that Brees is not really looking for him that much beyond Michael Thomas or whoever's second, or Cook, or, or Kamara, or, it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, but man, the thing about Smith and he was a third round pick. Okay. So we may have put more expectations on the guy than we probably, a lot of people felt like he'd have been higher if he hadn't played at, what was it, Central Florida, or wherever he played at the small school. And, and so there may have been a little bit, but then he came out, and when you see the talent he has, he has ability. And so at this point, going in his third year and being put in that situation, he really has to make all of those catches, at least in our minds. Now, the coaching staff probably looking at it completely. One thing he really does well that they talked about in the game, and that the first time I heard it, is that he's a hell of a blocking wide receiver.
Right.
And he made a block down that sprung Kamara on one of his big runs and everything, and they actually pointed it out. And that's not the first time we've heard him talk about that. So in a way, you could say his career arc is kind of mimicking another guy that we had back in the day named Meacham. Remember Meacham?
Yes.
Now he was a first round draft pick, and he never did materialize into that kind of a receiver. As a prolific receiver, a first or even a second. He was a third guy, but he blocked and he did all those other things, and he stuck around for a long time. I mean, he was, and so that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from. And he didn't really bloom until his third year. Like I said, he never did reach the heights, but he didn't show much before year 3. And now Traquan's kind of in that point where most receivers, they always say the third year for a receiver, and that's changed in recent years. We've seen guys come in as rookies and light it up and everything, be the best in the league or whatever. But most of them, it takes a little while. So, we'll see.
And, and something similar to Meacham was there was injuries involved, and Traquan Smith, I think part of the reason why fans are getting frustrated with him, because I look at his play and say, well, just because somebody's not productive, but if the guy on the other side's catching 15 balls, there's not a lot of balls to go around. And if he's an all-pro, all-world receiver like Michael Thomas, again, even less. But the frustration comes from, it seems like Smith is often injured, and that's where people start losing patience, and because, and quite frankly, it's not like he's dropped a ton of balls. It's not like he's just not been very good. He's actually shown flashes, and can the consistency come? I think last night, at least in my perspective, proved to me that, again, not trying to suggest he's Michael Thomas or a number one receiver, but that he's a good, productive receiver who is not in jeopardy of losing his position or a spot or his career, as many fans like to suggest.
No, probably not.
But I think I tell you what, let's go ahead and move on to some good and bad and the ugly. And I don't know if we've already covered it, but we have a segment to do, and doggone it, we're going to do it.
You're a bounty hunter. Man's got to do something for a living these days. Dying ain't much of a living, boy.
It's time for the On Fleek, the Salty, and the Ratchet.
All right, Heath, I got to tell you, I updated our good and the bad and the ugly segment. We already getting comments. For those who, I don't know if they think we're serious. And you know what? I have realized that our show has kind of evolved. When we started, it was a lot of jokes and lots of, someone pointed out that we've gotten much more serious. And I don't know what that's all about, because I try my best to keep it lighthearted. But when we start talking football, sometimes we stay pretty focused on it. So, but we had some comments that a guy said to me, you realize that fleek is not a word that people use. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't use that word, nor, do I really, but I was trying to find some words that were, the same old music with new,
right.
I don't know. So I don't know if people got the joke or whatever, but hey, I'm committed to it. So people, maybe we can bring it back. All the kids around campus will be saying fleek again. They're like, where did that come from? BS and
Let's make fleek great again.
Yes, exactly. Bring back fleek. So let's start off with who would you nominate for your good?
Well, I kind of touched on it, right? He's the obvious bright spot. The only one that really stands out is Kamara, right? He had a game that we've been waiting for a while, ever since he had that injury in last season. It never quite looked the same. Yesterday, he ran and cut and looked a lot like the old Kamara, like he He really had the wheels back. He had the pep in his step. He had the move, the ability to cut and everything. And so he had a great game. I mean, individually, he couldn't do it all. But I mean, hell, he had 170 some odd total yards, I think, and 2 touchdowns or whatever. And so, he's the obvious good.
Yeah, I would agree with you. He proved in this game that he is the Kamara that, because the question was, and I don't know if it was a question, because look, he was that good his rookie year. He was that good in his second year. He had injuries in his third year. So now all of a sudden, it's like, are you going to pretend that what happened in the first 2 years and the first half of his third year just didn't happen because he played poorly in the second half of the season? So
right.
It's obviously
they brought out that point last night that I'd kind of forgotten about, despite the fact that he had the injury last year and wasn't the guy that he still had 81 receptions last season. So.
Right. He didn't fold it up. But
yeah.
I guess, oh boy, back to expectations. He wasn't special. And so that's what the two things that worries you about the contract is, can he maintain that special trait? Because it seems that running backs have that happen. And then all of a sudden they become the Kamara of the second half of the season last year, as opposed to the first half of the season. Now you're paying a lot of money for a guy that you can replace. But what we saw last night was not a replaceable player. That was a player that you need if you're going to take it to the next level. So yeah, I agree with that one. I'm going to go to I'm just for the sake of giving somebody some credit, I'm going to go with Traquan Smith, who, again, after a lot of criticism when he got his opportunity, I think he proved that he's a solid ball player and can be a large contributor. And quite frankly, until Sanders gets up to speed, the Saints are going to need somebody else besides Thomas when he comes back that's familiar with the offense, that Brees trusts. And quite frankly, it's obvious that Brees trusts him. And you know how it is in this league. Everybody is the Johnny-come-lately, the new undrafted free agent that's supposed to, replace everybody. The Saints have faith in Traquan Smith. And I think that when you have a healthy Thomas, I do believe that it's going to make fans rest a little bit better knowing that they have an option opposed to him and even Sanders. So let's not leave him out of the mix. But by the time those two guys are up to speed, you feel comfortable. You do have second options that we didn't feel like we had last year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to definitely be better off with all of those guys.
Okay. So now, let's hear about the bad and the ugly.
Well, again, I guess I'm going to nail it down a little bit more specific. I think probably anybody that's listening to me know this is coming, but the defensive backfield was putrid. I mean, it was just terrible. And I'm going to say later on in the game, but earlier in the game, I'm not really so sure because the defensive line was creating enough havoc that I don't know if we really saw that they were ever really tested that much. Jenkins had a nice play early on, but when it went bad, it went bad. And, getting beat and grabbing on the receivers and interference calls and just having no answer for Waller. Talk about P.J. Williams and P-Rob having this great camp. And, coming into it, man, I thought the defensive backfield was going to be really, really good. One of the, real strengths of the team. And, boy, last night they just crapped the bed. I mean, I have no idea, how that went off the rails like that. They just, I think we've just about covered most of it with the defensive backfield,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to add to it one of the things that bothered me the most, if you recall, late in the game where we actually still had a chance and if we could make a play, but there was a third down run. It was 3rd down and 10, and they ran to Jenkins' side. And he, is one of those situations where they pulled the guard, and you usually see that cornerback fly up and at least throw himself into the legs of the lineman to get him out of the way. And
right.
He just ran in there and just basically allowed himself to be blocked out of the play. And it brought up all kind of feelings for me. And it's just like, man, you bring in these guys and they're supposed to have some talent, and you look at that and realize that they are not selling out. They are not going full out to make a play, especially when, look, regardless of what you think, in the history of the Saints and the history of Drew Brees, if you give him a crack at it, there's a good chance. The first thing comes to my mind is last year with the Houston Oilers game. We were done. We were toast. Brees, regardless of how his arm strength and deep ball, and somehow or another, he managed to go right down the field in no time. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was well under a minute, and put us in a position to kick a field goal, win the game. But yet you have players that played like the game was over and like, I'd rather save it for next week and not get hurt. And it just rubbed me the wrong way and started making me think about the guys that we brought up. And I don't know, in my mind, somehow, if you were brought up and drafted by the Saints, you obviously have a bigger heart. And I know that may not necessarily be true, but it just feels like, man, you just buy these guys and they just not selling out. So I'm right on board with you, defensive backfield, specifically Jenkins. And,
now somebody, real quick, I did see some comments. I'm not real familiar with Jenkins' tenure in Philadelphia, other than he was making a name for himself. And, he left here and went there and had success. But I certainly didn't sit around watching Eagles games, and I didn't pay particular attention.
Well, Heath, I'm talking about Jackrabbit.
Yeah, no. I'm just, somebody
Okay.
was bringing this up last night in other words, what happened is we played Jenkins a certain way here, and he didn't have the kind of success that we expected. He went to Philadelphia, and according to the people who were making these comments, he played free safety in Philadelphia, not strong safety. Okay, and now he's back here, and he's playing a strong, he's not playing free safety here. We got Marcus Williams playing that role. And so the point that they was making is that we got guys playing out of position. And maybe there's some validity to that. In other words, I don't know. I can't really compare what he did in Philadelphia to the way the Saints are playing him here, and whether they're really using him to his strength. And then, of course, you had the other people who are making comments about whether or not he's half of his heart is at CNN and not even in football right now. And
Right.
I'm not going to make comments on that. I don't really know. I hope at least when the 3.5 hours when he's between the white lines, he's thinking nothing but football. But, he certainly he doesn't. He not everybody's really super happy with Malcolm Jenkins right now. Anyway, so I really want to see him clean the play up and bring what we thought we were getting back.
Well, sometimes, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all. And the thing is, I didn't watch him play at Philadelphia much, so I can't. But some of the plays that I saw with him close to the line of scrimmage, he was also in Philadelphia, did play a lot of the slot. So in some situations where he was getting beat by the tight end, it wasn't from a free safety. So I think there's similarities, except for when you go in single high, that Malcolm Jenkins is playing a similar role. Because what I'm saying is he did play a lot of slot, and he did do a lot of things that I saw him do last night in Philadelphia. He wasn't playing where, conversely, when you see Williams does one thing, and he plays that single high safety or other variations, but you don't see him down the box, because you could see last night he's just not a very good tackler. And we can talk about it. He talked about it, I believe it was after the first game, and said, hey, I need to improve my tackling. And it might have been in the off season. I can't specifically remember, but it's obvious that he's not a great tackler. He has a lot of range and he can make plays in that area, but if you're going to expect him to play in the box, it's just not his skill set. And sometimes you just have to accept that. That's what he does. If he does it well enough to do that and be that guy, then, you don't ask a satellite running back or, a scat back to be a power back. So at the end of the day, not all safeties are the same. But Williams has some serious issues with his tackling, and sometimes it doesn't come to light. Sometimes it's handled by everybody else. When it does come up, it's usually not very good. So last night he had an opportunity, came from the high safety to tackle, and Waller broke his ankles before he could even get to the I thought he was coming in to lay a hit, and Waller just gave him one of those. If I'm going to throw in another bad, sometimes maybe I'm not fair, but I feel like there are certain guys, in, like, let's say Brees, for instance, where he plays so well so often that when he has an off game, you want to call him out because it's the only time you're ever going to get to, or you don't you don't give him the good because he's good every week. Cam Jordan last night, I know there's a prevailing thought that he was double and triple teamed all night, and it was not completely the truth. He had plenty of one-on-one opportunities, and for whatever reason, didn't make the impact you would expect out of Cam Newton, and that was just really perplexing. Cam Newton, again, a guy that
Jordan.
always comes up. I mean, even in the run game, he just wasn't there, so it's hard to explain it. Was it the time change? Did they go to Vegas and, they snuck out of the hotel and, went to the strip? And I mean, these guys just
on the slots or something. I don't know.
And I hope that's what it was. I hope that we find out in a couple of weeks, because something leaks out that the whole team snuck out of the hotel through the back door and was gambling, drinking all night. And that's what happened.
Well, look, another angle to that is, and I'd like to see I hate to say PFF and all of that, but I'd like to see some other opinion. It's possible that the backup came out and had a game of his life, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know that this guy didn't just come out and actually look better than the high-priced starter that was missing,
And I'd like to reiterate that I'm not suggesting he was one-on-one with the guy all night, but there were several opportunities where you were like, oh, God, he's not getting a lot of help. He's getting double teamed like he does in every other game. So, that's the thing you have to consider. Cam Jordan gets doubled a lot and still makes plays. But if the two guys doubling you, if one of them is some guy off the street that's not very good, you still have an advantage because you're not dealing with two really good players. You're dealing with a good player and a bad player. So, and he just simply, and here too in the running game, man, it's hard to double an end in the run game. You know what I'm saying? You can double with a tight end. But again, those are things that happen to Cam Jordan every week. So there's really no explanation for why all of a sudden in this game, getting doubled is not new to Cam Jordan. So, so I'm gonna give him my bad as well. And I think that, I don't know, man. I have a feeling maybe the Saints might have read too many clippings, and you hate to think that you have a team that's that emotionally volatile that can't handle success.
Yeah.
But there's also this other element that in the offseason, I had some comments early in the offseason about, are the Saints getting any better? They just kind of reached a plateau of what they are. And without getting some more explosive offensive weapons, we're just kind of stuck. And that's what it felt very much like last night, is that what tells us this won't happen if the Saints end up winning 11 or 12 games like they have done recently and get in the playoffs? What tells us this won't happen again? So,
yeah, I think it was Chris Sims I saw, who a lot of what he says and all I don't particularly like, but he was making some sense this morning in that the Saints just don't have, even Michael Thomas, I don't think really fits in his category. On either side of the ball, the Saints don't have a guy that keeps other teams up at night trying to figure out how they're going to stop. People say Kamara. I'm not, maybe, okay, maybe. But they certainly, as good as Cam Jordan's been, he's solid. I love Cam Jordan. He's a really good, but he's not Mac or Watt or, he's not one of these guys that can literally just take over a game and terrorize another team to the point where he can almost single-handedly shut them down. We just don't have those. We got good guys, but I don't know if we have any of those elite guys truly, elite guys. I'm not, Lattimore, we like to, Lattimore Island and everything and this, that. I'm not sure Lattimore's that good. I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not good.
Well, Heath, let me add to because Lattimore is another guy that he's a Cam Jordan type. He's really good, but man, he gets beat way too often to be a guy that you say, man, he's a lockdown. He's not a lockdown. He's very good, but I watched teams go after him last night. I can't remember the kid's name, and there's one particular play, and they showed the highlight. It was later in the game, a very big play. And he just basically from the left slot, ran like a 10-yard in route and beat Lattimore. And it was a crucial play. Lattimore got beat, and it's like teams don't go after guys that they know that they simply cannot beat. And teams go after Lattimore. They go to his side. And while he does match up, and that might be the situation, that is, he's really good as long as the matchup is right for him. And it seems like he plays bigger receivers. And, I see his height, weight, and he seems like a pretty big and thick, corner. And maybe that's what helps him bow up against, guys like last week, but not play the smaller, quicker receivers as well. It's just he's just, again, I'm not saying he's not a good player. It's just that he's kind of like the same way I feel about Cam Jordan. Really good. I mean, he's the best we have, but he's just not a guy that takes over games. Not a guy that you say, man, it's 3rd and 10. Watch this. They're going to be hanging on for dear life. It's one of those things where you're like, come on, Cam, do it. But, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't.
Right,
So,
right. And that was another thing I've heard said. And we've heard this one before too, right? That Lattimore seems to play lazy when he's not, when he doesn't come into a game where he's going to be going up against Mike Evans or DeAndre Hopkins or, the outside of Renfro, who plays in the slot, and Waller, who's a tight end, and Ruggs. But Ruggs obviously wasn't fully healthy. He really wasn't involved.
And he's a rookie.
Game at all. He drew that one penalty. That was really that's one of those. Well, I hate to see that pass interference thrown in that when they threw up a prayer. The ball was overthrown by 5 yards.
And you bailed him out.
And they bailed him out, I mean, the Saint player bailed him out by doing, but the referees kind of also, gone are the days of ball was uncatchable. We're not going to call this because that was just a prayer throw. But he just, I don't know, man. He, like you said, he just doesn't always show up that way.
Yeah. Well, and those games that you're talking about happen way too often to consider him. And he's going to be the next guy that his contract's going to come up and it's going to be astronomical. And the Saints are going to have to make a decision. It's like, okay, maybe he has some issues, but he's still very good. And the problem with the NFL is you don't pay very good money. Everybody who's good gets paid elite money.
Right.
And,
yeah.
So, like, if you have a guy that's just the single best that no one else can match up to at cornerback, well, when Lattimore's contract comes up, that's his number, plus a little bit. And you say, golly, but there's no other option. If Lattimore's not there, who are you going to replace? It's not like you can take the money and go pay for somebody else because they're not available. So it forces you to overpay for a guy that is, while very talented and makes some play, he just has too many lapses. And that's the thing is what you're saying. It's like, where's the guy that down in and down out, boy, he's going to win every time with very few exceptions.
Right. And, look, we have a situation coming up where even Loomis can't out Loomis some of the numbers that are coming up, right? We got too many guys coming up for big contracts, and we have a cap that's going to go down. And so at some point, even Loomis ain't going to be able to pull off something slick to sign all these guys. And right now, for my money, there's 2 guys coming up right now, and I'm going to put one at priority, and it's not going to be Lattimore. I'll put Ramczyk at the front of my list of people that I want to re-sign. Because this guy, he did have the one where he got beat last night and got caught on a holding call. So rare that it was noteworthy to everybody. I mean, this guy was all pro, and he's been great since he came into the league. And quite frankly, if I gotta let somebody go somewhere that I can't afford to pay him the kind of money that I know they're going to get, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to put Ramczyk at the top of my pecking order.
Wait, just to clarify, you saying you keep in Ramczyk?
Yes. I'm saying I put Ramczyk's re-signing as a priority over Lattimore if I got to choose between them.
Okay. Well, and
I know a lot of people are going to probably think I'm crazy with that, but you know what they say: you win in the trenches. Ramczyk is just too damn good.
Well, I'm not one of those people. I completely agree with you. At the end of the day, you have to keep that offensive line together, especially if Breeze is done and you bringing in a new face, whoever it may be. It could be somebody on our roster. You have to have an offensive line that can open up some running lanes and protect the quarterback, because if you bring in a new face or even a rookie or bringing up either one of the 2 guys that we have on as backups in Winston and Hill, you want to have that offensive line in check. And I'd rather have a defense with holes in it while you build a new defense as opposed to a quarterback that's just getting wrecked every play. So I'm 100% on board with that. So Heath, let's just give some final thoughts here. And remind everybody that we're doing a preview show that you'll see either maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whenever we get around to producing it. But give us your final thoughts.
Well, real quick, a final thought. I want to throw a little bit of shout out to Pete, who I give a lot of crap. Last night, in several occasions, he showed just how much of a monster he can be in the running game. So good on him for having a good performance last night at that. But other than that, look, the Saints are not as good. Well, I don't even know if we could say they look that great against Tampa Bay, but they're probably, they're not as good as the score and beating the team on paper that Tampa Bay was that you might think. But they're also not as bad as the team that we saw yesterday, right? Our old saying, the truth is always somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And so, the Saints are not immune by a long shot to having slow starts, right?
No.
And so if you throw in the fact that they didn't, you can almost think of this as the second preseason game, really, considering they didn't have a preseason. I'm not ready to write Breeze off yet. Yes, we know Breeze is at the end of his career, but he was last year. I don't think his arm strength has deteriorated even noticeably further between the end of last season and the start. You don't deteriorate that fast. He's 41 years old, for Christ's sake, not 61.
Right.
And so, people are throwing that number out there about the 4 yards, and it's the lowest since 2009. Well, you know who that was in 2009? They put that number up against Brett Favre. And I can guarantee you that in 2009, Brett Favre could still throw a ball 75 yards. So having a short through the air number like that over the first 2 games doesn't tell you everything you need to know about a quarterback's arm, okay? And so Brett Favre went on with that number to bring this Minnesota to the NFC Championship game. Of course, we all know against the Saints. And so I think Breeze will be the other number they've been throwing out, he's the worst in the league at throwing the ball outside the numbers. Well, last year he was the best in the league, okay? And he didn't go from best in the league to worst in the league after 2 games of this season over 1 off season. So,
Heath, I completely agree with you. I do expect the Saints notorious slow starters. There's been no off season. I don't know what it is. I don't think anybody does, but it is a fact that the Saints start off slow. And with the offseason we had, some of the new faces, and the offensive line, I think with Thomas being down, I think there's a lot of reasons. The Saints are look, they're a short passing game team anyway. So to try to act like last year, we saw what we saw last year. And is it good enough to win in the playoffs? I'm not sure. I'm really not. But is it good enough to win 12 games in the regular season? That hasn't changed. So we will see some improvement. We will see some things happening that make the Saints the team that we think they're going to be. It's now the defense, I don't know what to say, but I expect improvement. And listen, the Saints have done it long enough now. Yeah, confidence is low. You're worried about some stuff. But at the end of the day, this is the same team that was generally on the field last year with improvements. They're not going to all of a sudden turn into a bad team. So we just have to be patient and see what happens. But what I will say is we need to check those Super Bowl aspirations until we really see what type of team the Saints can be and if they have improved to that next level once they get their game together. But we have a tough game coming up against Green Bay. And if that defense doesn't tighten up really quick, it's going to be a tough game. Long night.
Right.
All right. For Heath Elston-Saad and Wesley Coleman and Tomas Mauricio, you've been listening to the BS and Beer podcast, and we will talk to you later.
And anyway, the person who sits here is but the most conspicuous member of a superb team of journalists, writers, reporters, editors, producers, and none of that will change. Furthermore, I'm not going away. I'll be back.
And that's the way it is.